When you're spending your umbral shards to increase your gear score and ultimately increase your average gear score, well, you want to be a little bit careful about the order in which you do it, because there's a good way and a bad way, and I'm going to show you what is the best way and how we actually know that this is true. Now, before we jump into this video, I just want to say I'm planning on streaming on Twitch, so please come along and follow me there. I've not actually done many streams yet, but I plan on doing more, so please do go along and follow, link in the description, of course. So I'm talking about the average gear score. So this is the white number here, which in this case is 600, not your expertise, it's your actual average gear score, which basically adds up all of your gear score and divides them. Well, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that, and I'm going to show you how and why. So first thing I want to talk about is that your shield is pretty irrelevant. Now, this is pretty interesting for tanks. You're obviously going to want the mitigation from a better quality shield, but the actual gear score of your shield doesn't count. Now, I'll show you why. So let's say I put in a gear score 585, my gear score remains unchanged. Let's say I put in this gear score 145, absolutely no change. Now, just to prove that, I've just put on a lower quality sword, so that's why my gear score's gone down. But again, if I put on the rubbish shield and I make sure maybe I've even got my shield out, there's no change to my gear score. So then I'm just going to take off all my clothes, which is something I like to do anyway, but we'll do it in game as well. Now, one thing I want to explain is that there are 10 usable slots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 10 slots basically. So we would presume that each slot gives you a 10% of your total average gear score, but that's not actually the case. Now, let's say I put in a gear score 600 item into any of these slots. Well, we would expect our average gear score to go to 60, because that would essentially be 10% of the 10 slots. Basically 10 slots, it would be 10%. Basically, if you divided 10 by 600, my average gear score would be 60. I'm not going to explain it too much in detail, I don't want to complicate things, but what I'm going to do is put in my chest piece here, which is gear score 600 exactly, and we should expect gear score 60. Oh, 73. That's not 60. Now, let's say I put in my boots, right? These boots are 607. So when I put in the boots, we would expect 73 at least, wouldn't we? Again, no, it's actually 21. And the reason this is because some slots contribute a different amount to your average gear score. Now, this is very important for the gear score rating when it comes to expedition mutators, and that's why we're talking about this. So I could sit here and maybe try and tell you the percentage that each slot gives, but there's really two important things to note. Number one, your weapons actually contribute way more than anything else. So you can see when I put in this gear score, it's actually 599 because of my effectiveness. Then I go to 134. So you can see that the weapons are super, super important. Then following that, your next most important piece is the chest piece. Now, all three of these, well, basically the weapons are giving about 22.5% of your total average gear score, and the chest is giving, I think, maybe something like 12. Now, what I'm going to do is show you a spreadsheet, or I'm going to link a spreadsheet in the description basically, which is one that I made. The percentages might be a little bit off because I'm not actually a mathematician. I haven't really calculated this like down to the nitty gritty. I don't really know how to, but you can see that there is evidence of this. And in fact, there is a spreadsheet that somebody else has made, which is actually the order in which you want to upgrade your gear. So it says like upgrade both your weapons first, then your chest, then back to your weapons. And it's basically the most efficient way of spending your umbral shards to get your gear score average up. I will leave a link to that in the description. I don't know who made that. I do apologize about that. The next things to note, by the way, yes, the chest and the weapons and stuff like that are quite high. The lowest ones, and I did not realize this, and this is actually how I found this out, is basically the boots. The boots give essentially the lowest of any. It's 21, which equates to, I think, something like 3%, 3.5%, something like that. And keep in mind that we would have thought that each slot would have contributed 10%. You can see that that's pretty bad. The head and the pants are about 7%. The chest, I think, is 12.25%. The gloves are about 5.25%, and the boots are 3.5%. The jewelry seems to be about 6.6%, and then your weapons, as I said, are basically 22.5%. So your weapons are nearly like half of your total average gear score, which is why basically I bought some cheaper like legendary weapons, because going from 599 to 600 costs a lot of umbral shards, whereas going from like 600 to 610 is actually quite cheap. If somebody knows like a table that is actually precise, I will try and post that as a top pinned comment. But other than that, I will obviously leave a link to the list that I've made on a Google Doc, and I'll leave you to the link that somebody has posted, which is the exact like order in which you should do things. But the key thing, as I keep repeating, is that you basically want to make sure you've got decent weapons, and then you want to make sure you've got a decent chest, and then you probably want to look at, I think, like the head and the legs. Now, the reason that that's all important is because there is a gear score scaling mechanic in the expedition mutators. Your average gear score is actually super important, and if you don't know about this, then you might do what I did and just like increase your boots, when really you actually want to be making sure you get your weapons first, and so on and so forth. And that, as I said, could be vital for your progression in the mutators. Now, if you already know this information, then this video has been a complete waste of time, and I would apologize to you guys. But if you didn't already know this like I didn't, then do make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel as well. All in all, have a most beautiful day, like and subscribe. Goodbye.